with me, Burhan, and with Rifka.
Assalamu alaikum.
And Yusuf.
Assalamu alaikum.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Apologies for being on a little bit late, but it was worthwhile. If you were listening to Sheikh Abu Bakr al-Shatri doing his beautiful recitation, I'm sure you were encapsulated. No, I thought you were. I'm sure you were mesmerized by that beautiful recitation, and you couldn't wait for him to carry on going, and probably hoping that it could be for a little bit longer. So it's an honor for us to be on a little bit late, to give all the listeners and the viewers an opportunity to listen to that beautiful recitation. So Jazakallah khair to Sheikh Shatri. It was a really beautiful recitation. So for today's show, our final show, inshallah, on Ramadan Radio, we are going back to talking about Qatar specifically for a while. And what we're going to be talking about today is practicing Islam in the Muslim world. And one of the reasons we're talking about that is because for us personally, when we left the UK, there were various reasons, and they included wanting to practice Islam more, wanting to live in a Muslim country, wanting to live amongst Muslims, probably driven by some level of discomfort about living here. Also, there was a financial factor that's undeniable. And when we talked to other expats in Qatar, we found there was a very similar broad set of reasons why people came, but maybe one reason was more important than another, but that seemed to be the general theme. So what is Islam like in Qatar and in the Gulf and in the Muslim world? We've got a guest going to join us in about 10-15 minutes to give their views on that. But let's have our views to begin with. Do you want to kick off, Yusuf, in terms of, did you think it's improved your iman? Did it increase your practicing of the deen on a general level?
Well, I think I have quite a different, my experience of it was slightly different because I was younger. So overall, I think actually, no, it didn't.
There's a shocker.
Yeah, because I think being in a Muslim country is easy. It's easy to practice Islam. But for me, being young and not being in a community of other British Muslim expats, there was no kind of like encouragement to learn more about my deen. There was no kind of like necessity to learn more. Whereas over here, you're kind of forced almost or pressured to learn about what you believe in, because there are so many different types of Muslims in England, so many different religions. Eventually you're going to get into not an argument, but a discussion with someone. Yeah. And you have to be able to defend yourself. Whereas over there, there's no kind of like drive in that same way.
And I think that's also quite a common theme, right? That there is I wouldn't necessarily say that it's not easy to practice Islam there, but I think in some ways it becomes slightly autopilot. You become a bit complacent, you potentially, and you take things for granted. And then, whereas over here, there is a sense of struggle, a sense of effort, and that drives you to improve yourself.
I agree with what you're saying in terms of the autopilot thing, because you're doing good deeds, you're doing more, whatever, everyone's praying Jummah together, so it's all positive influence. Yeah. And there's Quran class in every masjid, and everyone's encouraging you to pray and all that stuff, but there's no kind of like drive.
What do you think?
I think what Yusuf said was really interesting. He moved there when he was obviously younger. I think for us moving there after we'd been through that struggle and sort of already got that really strong sense of Islamic identity and who we knew who we were and stuff, and why we believe what we believed. For me, going out there, after initial slump of maybe about 6 months where I just felt low for moving in a new place and not having that network and people around me, I felt like it did strengthen me. And the reason why it strengthened me was precisely because when you go there initially, you're kind of on your own and you don't get to do all of the busy good deeds that you get to do in the UK. Like in the UK, all the opportunities to do good, there's so many opportunities to do good in terms of you know, people are really struggling out here. You have lots of different charity networks. They've got active communities in terms of mosques and stuff. So there's always something for you to get involved in if you're that way inclined. Over there, I felt really kind of on my own. And through being on my own, I kind of rediscovered my own personal relationship with God, which had kind of got, like, obviously it was still always there, but you have time to then just focus on, okay, so what is when I kind of cut away all of the external things that I busy myself with in life, what is my relationship with God about? And I think Qatar really helped me with that aspect.
I think that's a really good point. I think it shows a generational gap, right? So we were kind of brought up, and we grew up in the era of, you know, the Bosnian War and the Iraq War and 9/11 and that kind of stuff. And so our kind of Muslim identity was forged through these kind of global events to some degree, and the reaction over here. But it was actually quite a political Islamic identity, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And like it was like political Islam was quite was at the forefront, and the spirituality side of it took a back seat.
Yeah.
And I think going to a Muslim country, going to Qatar, for me anyway, it helped us to tap back into that spiritual side of things, and that connection with Allah, both in terms of from a heart point of view, but also just from a routine and practicing point of view. Things like not being last in, first out at Jummah because you've got to get back to work. Things like not having to stand there in the aisle at Sainsbury's and read all the, you know, the ingredients to check if it's pectin or whether it's beef gelatin, or, you know, does it say suitable for vegetarians on it? Things like going early and doing Surah Al-Qaf on a Friday, and interacting with other Muslims afterwards, having these lunches and the picnics and stuff that we talked about last week. So for us, from a generational point of view, it made that difference. But I suppose that there's a stark difference.
Well, I mean, I experienced the same thing in terms of what I thought was being more spiritual, and kind of when we moved back here from Qatar, it was like, oh, I really miss being in a Muslim country where the whole country revolves around like Muslim events and stuff like that, and Jummah being a communal thing.
Yeah.
And for a while, I think I kind of convinced myself, or just thought, because I didn't know any better, that it was a spiritual thing. But I think it was just me missing home. Right. It was me missing my home of Qatar. But because I realized after a year or two of being at uni that actually you get the same spiritual feeling from community things over here. You get the same thing from praying Jummah at SOAS, which is where I went to uni. But praying Jummah there felt the same. Not the same, but similar in terms of that feeling of being around Muslims your age, because it's still a community thing. So it's not like I completely didn't feel any spiritual element, but it's just the understanding this.
I mean, from an ease of practicing, there's some obvious stuff out there, right? Yeah. In terms of there are masajid everywhere, and there are prayer rooms, and there's halal food, and then you hear the adhan. I mean, these are the common things which people talk about. But what other things made the practicing side? I mean, we'll delve more into the spiritual side as well, but just in terms of practicing and the ease of it, which then brings on potentially that complacency. What other elements were there out there?
I think in terms of the ease with which you could wear hijab, the kind of respect that you had, the sort of something as simple as like being able to go to a shop, just a normal regular shop, and finding loads of different options of things which were modest wear, which you'd have to kind of search for over here. I mean, it's slightly better now, but you know, we're talking 2010. There wasn't quite as many options over here. So all of that just felt like it was ready and in place. You basically just had to tap into it, and it was all ready and available for you. So your practicing wasn't such a struggle, but in it being not a struggle, it doesn't necessarily mean that it was less effective. I felt the fact that I was being given time to just, that whole Jummah thing, going and reading your Surah Qaf around other people who are also getting early and reading, and that kind of joy that you get around being around people who are all praying at the same time and making long du'as and all that. That over here, I mean, you said it's the same at SOAS. For me, as a woman, when you're doing Jummah, you're normally not in because obviously the brothers need the space. You're not there the first time. Maybe second Jummah you get in, and there's no lots of sitting around beforehand, because obviously they need the space. So you kind of come in right before the prayer starts. It's really short. So there's none of that.
That's something that's one of the main differences with Jummah that you can't really replicate here, is over here, Jummah's is speedy, it's in and out. It's like people who need to go back to work.
It's very functional.
Over there, it's the whole day you get off. So, you know, it's
yeah, and that makes, I mean, the qualitative difference that makes to your life as a Muslim, you can't put you can't, it's immeasurable. It really is. I think if I was to say there was one thing which really changed my, you know, my practicing and my Islamic lifestyle kind of thing. It's not really the halal food, because you can get that. It's not really the, you know, yes, you can find masajid here. It's not necessarily even the dress stuff. Well, it's different for men. I know that's more of a, or it's less of a challenge for men. But having Friday off as a holiday it was transformational. I
think as well as that, it's just hearing the sound of the azan. I don't think you can underplay just how much that changes your heart and your psyche, in terms of, you know, you long to hear it, and when you're away from it and you don't hear it, it just makes you feel so down. And when I went back to Turkey recently, just hearing it again, it lifts your spirits. You feel connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's just lovely, and there's just constant reminders throughout the day.
So haven't you always taken Fridays off work though, since the beginning?
No, I used to, before we moved out there, I used to regularly work from home on a Friday. I had a very generous and understanding employer. I mean, I used to work from home on a, you know, it wasn't just me, but, you know, I put that kind of request in after having been there for a couple of years, and said, well, look, this is the kind of routine I'd like to do. And of course I can come in by exception. If I haven't got client meetings, then is it okay if I do like this?
Did it have as much of an impact having Fridays off here?
No, I don't think I took advantage of it as much.
Oh, right.
I think, you know, it would be good in terms of the Jummah, but because I was the only person doing it, or I was, you know, it wasn't like a community thing. Like after Jummah, I'd still just be coming home and having lunch here, or, you know, there was no kind of community activity, there was no communal activity, because it was just me. Yeah.
If anyone's listening and they've had any experience of living abroad in a Muslim country and the impact that it's had on their faith, then please do phone or text us in. The number is 07933 003179. That's 07933 003179.
I think we'll go to our guest now, who's waiting patiently. Brother Kashif, are you there?
Yes, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, Kashif. How are you?
You hear me?
Yeah, hear you fine.
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
So do you want to just give our listeners just a quick 30-second bio? Just let us know who you are.
Yeah, basically, I first came to Qatar in 2007, so I had two tours of duty, if I'd like to say. The first one was from 2007 to 2013. Then I went back to the UK for a couple of years, and then I came back out here from 2015 onwards. I'm currently in the ambulance service in the main hospital here, so I'm still working with them, and hence still put the blues on now. We're on a kind of iftar break now. So I've had two experiences of going back to Qatar as well. So it's quite quite different to a lot of people. But again, in saying that, a lot of people do come backwards and forwards and do 2-3 times the journey. Once you get the bug, it's quite difficult to shake it.
It is indeed. It is indeed. As you know, I know that as well. So what, I mean, we've had this kind of discussion before, Kashif, and give me your views on this balance between the ease of practicing Islam in somewhere like Qatar and the potential kind of complacency which you can fall into, and becoming more of a routine and not coming from the heart so much.
I think what Yusuf and yourself and dwelled upon, I think they're absolutely right. You know, like, everyone's on a different spiritual journey in life when they come to Qatar. So you yourself were on a lot more mature spiritual journey compared to Yusuf, because Yusuf was in his formative years. So you're going to get different things from that experience. It's not going to be a uniform experience for all age groups. And I think that spiritual journey is quite interesting to kind of have some introspection on that, of where you are on that journey. So obviously, when you're young, you're much more amenable to certain things, and your foundation is being laid. So what I felt, particularly for my children anyway, was that their formative years being in Qatar were really, really good foundational years, because what children want, they don't want less. They want kind of ease, they want kind of structure, they want things to do. And from a spiritual perspective, from an Islamic perspective, in a country like Qatar or anywhere Muslim country, you've got a lot of those institutions in place, like the masjids and other kind of Islamic activities. So I think that's really important, and it's very good for the formative years. But when you get into like kind of the teenage years, that's when I think that the cultural aspect just takes over, and you know, and I know that a lot of people in the Middle East or in Muslim countries become kind of culturally Muslim. And I met a brother, he was saying something very interesting. He's saying he was a revert brother, and people were saying, "Oh, mashallah, you're a Muslim, and it's really good. You know, you changed." And he said, "No, we should all of us should go through this process of thinking why we are Muslim. We're not Muslim because we were born in this country, or we were born in our parents are Muslim. You've got to go through that process of questioning why. What's your why?" And I think when you're younger, you've got that kind of, it's a lot easier for you. And obviously when you're older, like adults, like we grew up in the 70s, 80s. So our experience of living in the UK is completely different to Yusuf's, the NFL running and stuff like that, the skinheads, used to go running. So we can relate to that, where Yusuf then, what are you guys on about? Whereas it was really frank and open kind of prejudice and racism, and we dealt with that. So when we come to Qatar or Muslim country, it's like kind of a big weight off our shoulder that we don't have to kind of prove ourselves, we don't have to be on the back foot. Actually, we're Muslim.
That's right. Yeah. And what about coming back to the UK? Actually, we've just got a comment which has come through about moving back from having lived in the Muslim world, coming back to the UK. I just wanted to touch upon that. But I'll just read out the comment, and then we can have a quick chat about that as well. So a brother who was in Morocco said, "I decided to come back to the UK for professional and financial reasons. After living for such a long time, making that decision was difficult because I was attached to the place, to the routines and the people. And I do miss the country now that I'm back in the UK, and I'd like to go back. But sometimes you have to choose between where you can see yourself living in a long-term basis." And for him, he's saying that would be a country like Morocco, not necessarily Morocco. And mainly that's due to the feeling of community and people's behavior. How did, Yusuf, what did you feel when you first came back to the UK, given that your experiences in Qatar from that point of view?
Oh, when I first moved back, for the first 2 years, even, it's only really recently that I've kind of changed my views on whether I'd move back there. But for like a good 2.5, 3 years after moving back to the UK, I really wanted to go back to Qatar. All I wanted to do was just get out of this country and go back. And I think that's pretty much everyone who moves out of the Muslim country and comes back here wants to go back immediately. But
it feels quite alien, doesn't it, when you come back?
Yeah,
even though you've grown up here, it feels, well, you didn't grow up here so much, but
half
10 years, 11 years.
Yeah.
But then recently I've been thinking about, I do want to get out of England, I think, because I don't like it here, especially in terms of like, if I have children someday, hopefully, inshallah. That I don't want to raise them here. But whether I'd go back to Qatar, I don't know. It's not somewhere you can stay long term either. You can't like retire there.
No. What about you?
I think I'd definitely want to go somewhere. Qatar has lots and lots of positives in terms of faith and stuff, and the people, and positive experiences with all the other expats that were there. But I'm open. Like Qatar, Turkey, I don't mind. Just not here permanently, long time, please.
but I think the sense of kind of shock when we came back was probably greater than for us than for Yusuf. I'm not sure.
I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, I'm still in shock.
You're still in shock.
To be honest with you, I don't think I've recovered yet, and which is why I think this is one of the reasons I'm doing this show. It's kind of cathartic for me to talk about Qatar twice a week and pretend that I'm back there and talk to Kashif and get him on the screen and pretend that I'm sitting with him on that sofa. So, what do you think, Kashif?
It's cheaper than the cycle.
It is, isn't it? It's cheaper than the Qatar Airways flight.
Yeah.
But you know, when you came back before your second tour, did you have that drive to go back?
It's quite interesting, actually. The first 6 months, you're on a high. You're on a kind of honeymoon period of coming back to the UK. You think, okay, we've come back now. I've done 5.5 years, whatever years, and you feel okay. You feel quite pumped up, and then you get sucked into that kind of rigmarole of the kind of Groundhog Day, everything going back. And the biggest thing that hit me was the lack of time. Even though I thought I'd managed my time quite well, but a lot of people were running around like headless chickens. I mean, one simple example was, as you know, in the Middle East or in Muslim country, when you have iftars, people are happy to come around, and it's very easy to arrange iftars for families and stuff like that. But when we were back to the UK, it was so difficult trying to arrange an iftar for people in the locality. The mindset wasn't there, and it was pressure of time, pressure of going to pray Tarawih and everything else. It was really a big shock to the system.
That's true.
And what was interesting, I don't know if there was I was reading The Road to Mecca by Muhammad Asad, and he goes through this exact same transformation where he went to Palestine. He spent a lot of time in the Middle East. He went back to Berlin, which was kind of the more sophisticated city in the whole world at that point. And he was just hit by the kind of impersonal, robotic nature of society there. And he had this kind of massive longing to go back to the Middle East, and hence he went back to the Middle East. And I thought, I read that bit, and I thought, man, that guy hit it right in the head. This is how I'm feeling. Because you come back and robotic society, it's not human society. That's what I felt, that human nature, that human aspect of society was lost when you come back to the UK.
Yeah, that's a very interesting observation. I think I'd agree with that as well. I think that's certainly been my kind of experience. I think I wouldn't have put it as eloquently as that. If anybody of our listeners has got any questions or comments or has experienced this in the Gulf or in any other Muslim country, please do join us. You can call in on 07933 003 179, and you can speak to us live on air, or you can text us or WhatsApp us on the same number, 07933 003 179. I believe we asked a few of our friends just to give us their thoughts, just kind of like for 30 seconds, 60 seconds of life as a Muslim in these countries. So I think we have the AV up and running. Can we play that now, please?
Should we do it after we go to the call?
Or we can take a caller first, and then we can go to the AV after that. So I think we have we have Afshar on the line. Are you there, Afshar?
Yeah, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
So go ahead, Afshar. You're going to tell us a little bit about your experiences?
Yes, I want to share my experience of working in Saudi Arabia. So I used to work as an academic coordinator at university in Riyadh, and usually Saudi is somewhere where people go to kind of improve their imam, in terms of their iman, because of the associations with Makkah, Medina.
Right.
But what I found in Riyadh is that the Muslims that went there from Britain, due to the kind of restrictions and the segregation that existed at the time that I went, and I know that it's kind of changed over recent years, sisters actually ended up doing things like taking off their hijab. People who had never gone to parties in London were kind of going to the parties there. There was like a lot more free mixing. And when they came back to the UK, a lot of them were saying, I can't believe I was like that when I was in Saudi Arabia. They were really embarrassed about it. Right. And I remember there was one particular incident where I was at a Western compound, and because I was wearing a black hijab, I was asked to remove it. And of course, like I wouldn't remove it. I went to a friend's house and I put on a colorful hijab. But I think this is a side sometimes of certain countries that we kind of don't always hear about.
Yeah.
And know that kind of exists over there as well. So it can have like a very different effect on your faith sometimes going to a Muslim country.
So did you feel, so was that something that was particular to, was it like just in Riyadh, or was it like, is that like generally across Saudi, where people just, you know, was there a very kind of fixed split between people who were practicing and then people who were kind of like being pushed away, or maybe it was like compound life was very different to the rest of it?
So compound life was very different to the rest of it, but even people that didn't live in compounds, I think because of the way Saudi was at that time, and it still hasn't changed that much, people kind of just felt they can't do anything. So they felt, okay, you know what, I want to kind of interact with others. I don't have that space. So they ended up doing things which they usually wouldn't have done.
Okay, so it's like the pressure and restrictions kind of drove them away from Islam rather than towards it. And how did you feel?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I found it strange kind of seeing all of that around me, but yeah, so it was quite an odd experience. But alhamdulillah, you know, there were some kind of institutes where you could study Arabic, which I joined up to. I found like a sister circle that I could go to. And a few kind of groups. So I had like a good group of friends. But then I did find that everyone else around me were going to all the embassy parties and you know, all this kind of other stuff, which, you know, they kind of had never done before.
So for you, generally speaking, like if you had to do like a yes, no, so Islam for you was like a better thing back in the UK than out there?
Yeah, definitely, 100%.
Okay, excellent.
Okay.
Jazakallah khair.
Thank you very much. That's really interesting.
That's okay.
I think a lot of people do see the Gulf countries as one monolith, but they're very, very different. They're very different in terms of the way people, the reasons people go there, the lifestyle there. And I'd imagine even Riyadh is very different from Jeddah as well. We've got a number of questions which have come through. So we're just going to go through those because we've got about 20 minutes left. Can you share some insight on how Eid celebrations are different than they are in the UK? Which obviously Eid is a fundamental part of our kind of Islamic calendar. How do you think there's been different?
I think Eid in Qatar was the best thing about Qatar. Eid was the...
How so? And why is it not
just
so good
like
here?
you know how when you're praying Eid prayer in the whole country you can hear the what is it?
Tasbih.
The tasbih thing.
Yeah.
But everyone's doing it. It doesn't matter where you are in the country. In the morning, everyone's doing it, and everyone's praying. It's just like everyone's hugging each other. You know, you get that here. People do Eid prayer in the parks and stuff, whatever. But it's just not the same. You still know that there's going to be people, your neighbors, someone who's hating the fact that they can hear recitation in the park.
Yeah.
You know, whereas over there, just the whole country is just like celebration.
And the timing as well. Well, Eid prayer is prayed after Fajr, isn't it? It's prayed 15, 20 minutes after Fajr.
Everyone here, you can't really do that.
You can't do that here. And there's one Eid prayer, right? In terms of, it's done at one time in different places. And it's always done outside. Although they do it inside the masajid as well now, just because it's getting a little, you know, when it got very hot. But it is, you know, it's not like there's one at 8 o'clock, one at 9 o'clock, one at 10 o'clock. It's much more what it's supposed to be in terms of it's a community prayer. So I hope that answers that question.
Just one other quick thing on Eid. So because everyone there is without their families, you found that lots of expats would make families of treat each other like they were their own sort of blood relations and stuff. And so you'd literally have stuff which I remember from when I was growing up and was very young in my parents' home, is that people had open door policies, and you just literally have families visiting other families throughout the day, you know, 4 or 5 different houses that you'd go and visit. And that kind of warmth and open door thing is something which I guess you have pockets of communities that do that in the UK, but not quite so much. People kind of stick to their own immediate families. And that was really eye-opening and lovely to be a part of.
Okay. And we have another question. Do Muslims go for Islamic reasons to the Gulf, or for money or lifestyle? I don't think we can. I mean, I think it's different for different people, but I think it's never just one thing. I think it's a combination of lifestyle, money, Islamic reasons.
It depends where you go.
Career reasons. Yeah, and depending on where that balance is, that will probably determine where you want to end up.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's a very subjective thing. Is it easy to practice a form of Islam that is different from the majority in Qatar? That's a question from Hamza. Why don't you take that one, Kashif? Is it easy to practice a form of Islam that's different from the majority in Qatar? You've been there the longest.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends what you define by easy to practice. I mean, yeah, whatever you do, you're quite free to do whatever you want to do in your own house, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
I don't understand fully what you mean by the form of Islam, but generally, yeah, no one's going to be, there's no kind of big brother kind of state thing that's going to kind of look upon kind of form of practice of Islam you're doing per se. So I think I'm interpreting that's what the question is. I think it shouldn't really be a big problem, to be honest.
And what about? I mean, this is another very good question that's come through. I'll keep with you on this one. What influence do Muslims in Muslim countries have on those of of other faiths? Are we setting a good example?
Well, that's a good one. You get you broadly get two camps. You obviously get the ones that, when non-Muslims see them, they're actually bowled over with them. They think that, wow, these guys are amazing, or this person is really good, and it's a different experience, and they're really, really impressed with Muslims, and hence you get a lot of people who accept Islam from that kind of dawah perspective. And on the other hand, you've got people who want to know about Islam, but they come across people who are Muslim by Muslim by name, but their actions are far from Islam, so they get put off by those kind of people. So it's it's two extremes, and I think it all depends on what that first impression is. And I think on a side note to what you were saying, I think the dawah potential in a Muslim country is amazing, massive, because I think a lot of non-Muslims that come to these places, a lot of them come with a clean slate of let's see what Islam is. So if they're seeing a positive image of Islam and a positive images of how people who practice Islam, then that makes a massive difference. And you see a lot of people accepting Islam because of that. And unfortunately, likewise, you got the other side. You see the bad people who are Muslim, and they get bad impressions from that.
Yeah, and I think that's completely right. And I think there is one element of that which I just add to, which is that in some instances, if the people, it really depends on the person themselves. If they have a kind of a pure heart and they're looking at it objectively, they will disassociate the practice from the religion, and they may put it down to the individual. They may attribute it to the culture or to the nationality. So if it's a particular nationality or a particular cultural practice, they may not say, "Oh, this is because of Islam." I think it also depends on how that non-Muslim person is, what their impression already is of Islam. Do you see what I mean? Yusuf, do you want to read out that comment?
Okay, we've got a comment that says, Salam, I'm happy you guys touched upon the complacency that arises when living in a Muslim country. I think a lot of Muslims in the West have this huge misconception that all their Iman problems will disappear if they lived in a Muslim country and heard the Adhan every day. But it's completely not the case, as there are different elements of faith to be tested when living in a country like Qatar. For example, in some areas in Cairo, especially compounds, it pretty much feels like a bubble where every aspect of Western culture is heightened. So in terms of Muslims thinking about practicing Islam in a Muslim country, I do believe there are certain community aspects, like having that drive, that we do take for granted.
Yeah, which is very much the point that you were making.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it kind of links into the next question, which is, do Muslim children abroad get access to the same kind of Islamic activities as in the UK? For example, talks, workshops, scouts, fun days, etc. I think it's quite an interesting question, because my experience of it is that no, there weren't as many opportunities at all for community events for children, for British Muslim children. Nowhere close to what you've got here. I think that's partially because the expat community there isn't as big and hasn't been around for as long, and so haven't been developed as much. And also because people move after every 5 years, so it's not really a stable community there. And it kind of links into what we were talking about earlier in terms of a shock, because not having that community there, and not having these activities for children and these halakas and stuff, you did get families there trying to set up talks and trying to set up kind of Islamic stuff for children, but they never really caught on. And so I think because we didn't have that, moving back here was actually a massive shock for me. You guys said earlier that you think it's a bigger shock for you. Moving back for me as a young Muslim back to a Western land was a massive shock. I mean, there was a massive negative influence because I didn't really know who I was. I came back here and I didn't have this community, so I came back just on my own, and then got thrown into this life of, you know, the stuff that everyone gets up to in first year of university. There's all the kind of like madness that goes on. You kind of, it's very, very easy to get swept up. So I think that community element is necessary, and we kind of need to like improve that.
Okay.
There's another comment that's come through. It says, I think it can be quite challenging if you don't build the right network of friends. Agreed. It's quite easy to slip into the material pleasures of life in the Middle East. There's a strange passive attitude to faith in some workplaces. I've been in some places where a salam is returned with a hi, and that's from Shujat in UAE. He's a Qatar expert as well. So yeah, I agree. I think there is this sort of, I think you have to choose, I mean, like as always, you have to choose your friends really, really carefully. And the people that you have around you, the first set of people that you have around you are not necessarily going to be the people that are going to be the best for you in terms of your faith. You kind of have to be really, really kind of discerning about who deserves to be hung around with, who's going to have a positive impact on your faith. And, you know, eventually you'll find the right people, but it's not easy. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, thank you. We are now ready to play the audio, but I'm just going to read out this question because it's kind of related to that. And then once I've read the question, if we could play the audio, please, and then we'll come back and have a chat about it. So the question is about Islamic life in the Gulf. Is it all quite Islamic in these countries, or is there another side to it too? Not just in terms of the Westerners, but the Muslims and the local people themselves. Do you think it's not possible to live an Islamic, inverted commas, life in the UK? So let's just get the view of a couple of people who we asked to put their views together, and then we'll come back to that question.
Assalamu alaikum. So I've been living in Dubai now for 13 years, and the primary reason we came here was to bring up our kids in a Muslim country, and one where we could easily adapt to, and ultimately this has been beneficial for them and for us, alhamdulillah. From primary school, they have been taught Islamic studies and Arabic at their British school here, with 2 of my kids taking it to GCSE level. My kids have been attending an after-school madrasa locally too, which has helped them gain Islamic knowledge and socialize to make more friends in the community. So the knowledge of Islam is instilled in them, not only from home, but also from school and madrasa too. There are several mosques here, but having one which is walking distance from our villa is amazing. The adhan can be heard daily, and there's nothing quite like that. In fact, when I go to the UK, sometimes I feel as though I can hear the adhan, when in fact it's some other sound. As I've become so used to hearing it now, it's just become so normal to me. Even with the current mosque closures, the adhan is still being recited here, and it gives us great comfort listening to that. I've also met many like-minded Muslim ladies here from similar backgrounds who have become like family, and we all interact on an often weekly basis, enabling the kids to also form close friendships. On Eid, we meet and celebrate together, and in testing times, we are there for one another. This has been a huge comfort while living away from family in the UK. The expat Muslim community here is really helpful in easing everyone in. Wearing the hijab and the abaya, it doesn't seem like a challenge due to the Muslim majority population here and the religious freedom that we have. There is a lot of respect given to women who are covered here. Of course, praying is never a problem here. Whether you are picking the kids up from school or shopping in the mall, there are dedicated prayer rooms and wudu facilities for men and for women to use, while many provide hijabs and abayas for women to use while they pray. So to conclude, the ability to practice Islam openly and practically is better facilitated whilst living in Dubai.
Okay, so that was a sister that lives in Dubai. We have another clip from a brother in Qatar, which I think we can go to now.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Walid Kramfle, and I live and work in Qatar. I have been living in Qatar for the past almost 7 years now as an American US citizen expat. I am of Turkish heritage. It's, as I said, it's been a very pleasant experience as a Muslim. One of the sort of unique things that here is you hear the adhan 5 times a day. Masjids, musallas are everywhere, so it's easy to do your salah. You can go to the mall and shop and all that things. Food is halal here, so you don't need to worry about it. It certainly has improved my Arabic, and as such, improved my my Quran. There is a sense of community here, and there's a sense of community because, for example, I get together with the brothers after Friday prayers and for lunch, and here there are few masjids that can do khutbah in English, and it's great.
And the final clip from another brother in Qatar.
Assalamu alaikum. This is brother Kashif coming from Kosovo. I moved in Qatar 9 years ago, and I've been living here ever since with my family. The things I love about moving in a Muslim country is the accessibility which you get and the ease of practicing your Islam openly without any fear or concern, and definitely it helps a lot. I have met brothers from all around the world, and especially our dear brother Burhan from the UK, which we miss him big time in Qatar. And definitely there is things you have to think about moving, and especially when it comes to the part of Iman. It gets challenging for the fact that everything is kind of served to you and you get to get some things for granted. And definitely back home is more struggle. So this also helps to increase your Iman. And the good thing about being here is the wide community of Muslims, brothers and sisters from all around the world, and you get to learn a lot from meeting different brothers and sisters. There is definitely things you can do, like in your circle, halakas, there is lectures and stuff, so you have to keep yourself engaged in terms of keep your Iman upbeat.
Great. Jazakallah khair. That was brother Zich from Kosovo, and before that we heard from brother Walid from the Turkish brother from the US, and from
Farah from Dubai.
Farah in Dubai. So let's just go back to that question very briefly, because we've only got 5 minutes or so left and we need to wrap up. Yusuf, can you address the bit about culture? What's the balance between culture there and Islam? And obviously there's lots of different nationalities there as well, so there's a huge melting pot of cultures, but there's also a huge melting pot of Islamic practices as well. And then maybe you can take the more difficult one about, is it possible to live Islamically in the UK?
Well, I don't understand the culture question. Just talk about the different cultures in Islam.
Well, let's go to the second question then.
Okay, of course.
You can have a think about that in the meantime.
I think it's possible to live Islamically in the UK, of course, right? But I think it's just a question of how comfortable you feel, and how if you're looking for certain things in your life, or certain gaps or certain difficulties that you have. So for me, the kind of hearing the azan the whole time, having that piece of being able to go out and about freely and not feel uncomfortable or feel like, okay, a little bit on edge or whatever. The sense of brotherhood and sisterhood that you feel in those countries, I think for me that wins. So
and Yusuf, in terms of the cultural aspect, because there's lots of different Islamic practices there, right? From Egypt, from Morocco, from the Gulf, and things like that. Did you get a sense of some of these are Islamic, or they're more from that country? They're more cultural practices?
No, I didn't get any. I didn't experience any kind of cultural practice. In fact, I experienced more cultural practices here than in Doha. Over there, the Islamic practices that I experienced were very standard. It was just like prayer and fasting. There was no element of culture being infused in any part of life there. The only culture that I witnessed was Qatari like nationalism.
Right.
Pretty much. There was no kind of like, you know, like Egyptians have different kind of cultures, and you know, even the types of stuff that they wear, everyone wore thobes. There was no kind of like Egyptian dress, Moroccan dress. You occasionally get like a different kind of Moroccan white thobe, but even that was a little bit rare.
I mean, just on that, I think what I did find, the way I'd interpret that is that actually you can be Islamic in any country, because you can bring your culture with you, and that doesn't make you any less Islamic. Whether you're coming from the UK, whether you're coming from Egypt, whether you're coming from anywhere else, it doesn't make you any less Islamic. So we only have a few seconds left, so we need to wrap up. This is our final show. Is it our final show, Yusuf?
Well, no, it won't be our final show. We might be doing more podcasts, probably will, or we're going to turn it into a podcast maybe.
Inshallah, maybe.
Inshallah. But if you want to follow us, we've got social media. On Twitter, it's at Gulf Expat Show. On Instagram, it's at The Gulf Expat Show.
Thank you very much. And so from us, we'll say an early Eid Mubarak, and we'll say thank you to Ramadan Radio for hosting us, and for all the guys that work behind the scenes. And thank Allah for this opportunity to speak to you and to hopefully share some of our experiences. So from all of us, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.